What if the most dangerous nuclear standoff of the 21st century wasn't in the Cold War archives of history, but happening right now, today, in real time? What if a nation that had just been bombed, blockaded, and had its supreme leader assassinated still refused to surrender, and instead raised the specter of nuclear weapons? That is exactly where we are on May 13, 2026. Iran has just delivered its biggest warning yet, and the world is paying very close attention. To understand what is happening right now, I need to take you back just a few months, because this crisis did not start overnight. Iran and the United States had been locked in increasingly bitter nuclear negotiations through early 2026. Tensions had been building since January, when Iran brutally cracked down on the 2025 to 2026 anti-government protests. The U.S. began deploying air and naval assets to the region at a scale not seen since the 2003 Iraq invasion, including 2 carrier strike groups and hundreds of aircraft at forward bases. Despite indirect talks mediated through Oman, both sides failed to reach a deal. The U.S. president said most points were agreed, but the only point that really mattered, nuclear, was not. Iran's foreign minister insisted an agreement was just inches away, but accused Washington of maximalist demands. Then, on a night that would reshape the Middle East permanently, everything changed. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a massive joint military campaign targeting Iran's military infrastructure, nuclear and ballistic missile programs, and the leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The opening salvo struck the heart of the Iranian regime itself, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The attack triggered a torrent of hundreds of retaliatory missiles and thousands of drones across the Middle East, killing thousands, displacing millions, and shutting down one of the world's busiest airports, Dubai International. Iran responded not only with missiles and drones against Israeli cities and American bases across the region, but also closed the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which roughly 20% of the world's traded oil passes. Saudi Arabia and the UAE launched their own retaliatory strikes on Iranian infrastructure. The scale of this was unprecedented. But here is where the nuclear dimension enters, and it is the part that should keep every world leader awake at night. In February 2026, Iran had already informed the International Atomic Energy Agency that normal nuclear safeguards were, in its words, legally untenable and materially impracticable due to the ongoing attacks. This left the IAEA unable to verify whether Iran had suspended uranium enrichment or confirm the current status of its nuclear stockpile. Let me be very clear about what that means. The world's nuclear watchdog was effectively locked out of Iran's nuclear program at the very moment a war was being fought over it. Prior to June 2025, Iran had accumulated more than 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, dangerously close to weapons-grade levels. At that point, U.S. and Israeli intelligence assessed Iran was only months away from having enough material for a nuclear weapon. The June 2025 12-day war was supposed to fix that. Israeli and American forces bombed dozens of Iranian nuclear facilities. The operations pushed Iran's nuclear timeline back from months to between 1 and 2 years, and reduced Iran's ballistic missile arsenal from approximately 2,500 operational missiles to somewhere between several hundred and a maximum of 1,000. But here is the big reveal that is shaking intelligence agencies right now. A CNN investigation published on May 5, 2026 concluded that Iran's nuclear supply chain had partially survived the initial U.S. and Israeli strikes, with key elements either intact or undergoing rapid reconstruction. Bloomberg's independent satellite imagery analysis reached similar conclusions, directly challenging the administration's claim of a decisive nuclear setback. A preliminary report from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency assessed that Iran had moved much of its enriched uranium stockpile before the strikes even took place, and that the underground facilities were not collapsed as initially claimed. While CIA Director John Ratcliffe subsequently stated that new information showed severe damage that would take years to rebuild, the contradiction between these two assessments has fueled deep uncertainty. This uncertainty is the most dangerous variable of all. Nobody, not Washington, not Tel Aviv, not the United Nations, can say with certainty how much enriched uranium Iran currently controls or where it is. Iran's Pickaxe Mountain, a suspected third enrichment site southwest of Natanz, shows satellite imagery of two tunnel entrances being extended and covered. Construction is continuing. The site has been under development since 2021, and if it becomes fully operational, it represents a potential underground nuclear breakout facility that conventional airstrikes may not be able to destroy. As of May 11, 2026, the diplomatic track has hit a wall. President Trump publicly rejected Iran's counter-proposal to a U.S. war termination framework, declaring Tehran's response totally unacceptable. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian responded defiantly, stating, "We will never bow our heads before the enemy." Iran's military simultaneously issued a formal warning that its forces are at full readiness if hostilities resume. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to normal shipping. The U.S. has imposed a counter-blockade on ships attempting to reach Iranian ports. Iran has seized 2 cargo vessels and threatened military action if the blockade does not end. Almost no international shipping is using the strait, and a U.S. blockade has cut off more than 90% of Iran's international trade. Iran has suffered an estimated $200 to $270 billion in total infrastructure damage. If the blockade continues another month, Iran's oil production is forecast to fall by 1.2 million barrels per day. Global food prices have risen for 3 consecutive months, and the UAE has formally exited OPEC. And then came the moment that stopped the world. On April 7th, after U.S. forces struck Karg Island, Iran's primary oil export terminal, Trump posted on Truth Social that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. The statement caused international alarm that the U.S. was contemplating nuclear weapons use. The Secretary General of Amnesty International called it a potential threat to commit genocide. The White House denied considering nuclear weapons, but the damage to global confidence was done. Israeli analysts now warn that a surviving Iranian regime, having experienced systemic trauma and the assassination of its senior leadership, may adopt a new national security doctrine that places nuclear weapons at its center, not as a bargaining chip, but as the sole existential deterrent it believes it has left. So where does this leave us? Pakistan is mediating talks. Issues on the table include the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, sanctions relief, and a long-term peace framework. No further formal talks have been confirmed. The strategic picture is this: Iran has been badly damaged militarily, economically, and diplomatically, but it has not surrendered. Its nuclear program has been set back, but not eliminated. Its enriched uranium may have been relocated before the bombs fell, and its new leadership, shaped by assassination and bombardment, may be even more determined to acquire the one weapon that guarantees regime survival. This is Iran's biggest warning yet, not delivered in words alone, but in actions. Closing the strait, rebuilding enrichment tunnels, refusing every ultimatum. The message from Tehran is clear: we are still here, and we are not giving up the one card that keeps us alive. The questions I leave with you are the ones every serious analyst is asking today. Can diplomacy succeed when one side demands unconditional surrender and the other refuses to accept it? Can a nation be bombed out of wanting a nuclear deterrent Or does bombing simply accelerate that desire? And what happens if Iran does cross the nuclear threshold quietly, with the world's inspectors locked out? These are not hypothetical questions anymore. They are the defining questions of 2026. Think carefully about your answers and share this with someone who needs to understand what is truly at stake.